Jesus said, "Man cannot live on bread alone, but from every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." You're listening to Daily Truth.
It is therefore not a coincidence that before passing over the Jordan River, which again is a type of death, Israel, representing a type of the church, Israel, is being called to not go around or to build a bridge and go over, but they are rather called by God to go through the river. I've often used John Bunyan. He uses the river in Pilgrim's Progress to signify the final trek for the Christian, for the pilgrim. And the river is death. Likewise, the Jordan River, that's where John Bunyan got this idea. And I believe it is a good allegorical, symbolic idea. The Jordan River symbolizes death, and the people of God, the church, namely Israel, they don't get to skip it. You don't get to skip the Jordan. You don't get to skip the river. You don't get to go over it. You don't get to go around it. You have to go through it. Now, if the Jordan River in Israel is not a good enough illustration for you, if John Bunyan in Pilgrim's Progress is not a good enough illustration for you, allow me to offer the full trifecta, a third illustration, Homeward Bound. Right? Shadow and Chance, they're begging Sassy, begging her. Just right here, the river, it's slow, it's shallow. You just go through it. You go through it. And Sassy is arrogant and proud, as all cats are. Dogs are objectively better. And the Homeward Bound movie makes this point thoroughly. Sassy has to go her own way, and it gets her into trouble. She thinks instead of going through the river, she can go over the river, and it does not work out. Now, I'm hesitant to spoil the movie, but at the same time, I don't have a lot of compassion for people who have not watched a movie that's been out for probably 30 years at this point. So what happens is she's crossing the river on a natural bridge from a fallen tree. It breaks and collapses. She falls into the river and almost drowns. Likewise, Israel cannot go over the river, but must go through. Likewise, as it pertains to you and I, we are the new Israel, the spiritual Israel. We are Israel in the truest sense. We are the church, the people of God. And likewise, we are not going over the river of death or around the river of death, but we must go through the river of death. And two things that jump out of these two verses of our text, namely verses 4 and 5, in regards to the Christian's requirement to go through the river of death is this. Number one, for you have not passed this way before. That's the end of verse 4. This is a portion of life, the final portion of life, namely death, that none of us have dealt with before. It is appointed to man that he should die once, and then comes the judgment. In other words, brothers and sisters, you do not get to practice death. You do not get a rehearsal for death. Sure, you may suffer in this life and be on your deathbed, in a sense, and then recover. But none of us get to truly go all the way to the end and die as a rehearsal to die again. You could argue that maybe a few individuals, like Lazarus, but even then, it's not a benefit. Yay, Lazarus gets to die twice. Right? There's no need for us to have jealousy in that regard. So this is an untrodden path. It's a trackless path. Israel is going a way that no one has gone before. There's not a trail that has been etched into the ground to make the path level or easy, or to remove obstacles and stones and roots and weeds. This is not a path that has been traversed many times. This is a path that they will cross but once. It is a path that they do not know. It is a path where they have not been. There is no rehearsal. There is no training. Not really. There is no practice. But there is Christ. The ark of the covenant of the Lord goes before them. And Jesus, who has tasted death once and for all, for all his people. Not only does he pass through the river of death with us when that time comes, but he stands in the middle of the river in the covenant of his promise, in the covenant of grace, and he causes the waters of God's judgment not to swallow us up, but rather to provide a path we've never traversed before, but a path nonetheless where we can pass through as Jesus in his righteousness, in his covenant faithfulness, holds back the wrath and judgment of God so that we can pass through death without being swallowed up. Rather, the waters of death are swallowed up in his victory. And that is what we can trust in when that time comes.
Whoa. You're going to want to hear this. Our next two conferences are coming up quick. We've got first our fall conference. This is November 11th and 12th. That's a full day Saturday and a holdover for the Lord's Day, November 12th. Who's speaking at this conference? Well, we've got Jared Longshore and Chris Wiley and yours truly, Pastor Joel Webben. What's the title? The title is The Household and the War for the Cosmos. Now, I know you're thinking, wait a second, you can't use that title, Joel. That's the title for Chris Wiley's book. Well, I can use it because he's going to be there speaking and he gave me his permission. We're going to be talking about the household as the basic building block for pushing back the kingdom of darkness in this world. We're going to be talking about biblical patriarchy. We're going to be talking about marriage and parenting, how to keep your kids, how to shape and form them like straight arrows, like sharp arrows that do damage to the kingdom of darkness, training our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. A full day on Saturday, November 11th, and then holding Jared Longshore over for the Lord's Day, November 12th, to preach at my church, Covenant Bible Church in Central Texas. You can register at the early bird rate, which will not last long, but you can register at the early bird rate today by going to rightresponseconference.com. Again, that's rightresponseconference.com. Now, our second conference is our spring conference. This is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The title for this conference, Blueprints for Christendom 2.0. Blueprints for Christendom 2.0. We don't want to revert back to Christendom 1.0, although it would certainly be a whole lot better than the clown world that we're currently living in. But we recognize, despite the phenomenal features of a prior Christendom, there were certain bugs that we'd like to see worked out. So we're not going back. We are pushing forward to Christendom 2.0. We believe that the blueprints are 7 doctrines for ruling the world righteously. What are these 7 doctrines? Well, it's Reformed confessionalism, it's covenant theology, it's biblical patriarchy, it's presuppositionalism and Kuyperianism, and general equity theonomy and hopeful eschatology post-millennialism. Who's going to be teaching us on these doctrines? Voldemort, he who must not be named, Pastor Douglas Wilson himself. You also got Mr. Brighthearth, Mr. King's Hall, Mr. Haunted Cosmos, Pastor Brian Sauvé. And we also have Dr. Joseph Boot, and of course, yours truly, Pastor Joel Webben. We'll be doing 7 primary lectures as well as 2 90-minute panels with all the speakers together, and we'll likely add a couple more speakers along the way. Again, that's March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's Blueprints for Christendom 2.0. We've got the early bird rate going right now, but it will run out quickly. So go to rightresponseconference.com, rightresponseconference.com to register today.